What's up, comic and pop culture fans? This is James with minthuuntercomics, and today we're going to talk about Swamp Thing. More specifically, how has he been so consistently awesome? I had an epiphany when I was reading the current ongoing miniseries entitled The Swamp Thing, and it came to me, holy Louisiana, Batman, Swamp Thing has always been amazing, no matter the writing team, no matter the art team. And it got me thinking, what the hell is it about Swamp Thing that every single time there's a creative team, it's met with stellar work and critical acclaim? We're going to answer that today, but before we drop that intro, remember to like, subscribe, comment down below. Other than Swamp Thing, what character do you think has also had a perfect run? I'm talking no bad issues, no bad storylines. If you're thinking about writing Spider-Man, just remember that Norman Osborn impregnated Gwen Stacy. Every time you like and comment down below, you're entered into the 5,000 subscriber giveaway, where I am giving away the entire Legends of the Dark Knight run away to one lucky winner. Let's get this thing started. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to give you the basic rundown on Swamp Thing and give you the last 50 years in about under 2 minutes. We're going to focus on the most prominent character, Alec Holland, who was a brilliant scientist developing a biorestorative formula that promised to change the fields of botany and medicine forever. When he refused to sell the formula, the lab was sabotaged. Holland was doused with burning chemicals and he dove into the nearby swamp to save himself. Instead, he emerged as a giant plant-like monster. Swamp Thing's had a few connections to the human world, one being Abby Arcane, the one woman capable of seeing and loving the man beneath the moss. The other being John Constantine, who got his start with Saga of Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing can change size, grow wings and fly, has incredible strength, but most importantly, he is the avatar of the Green, basically DC's version of the Force, in which he can connect his consciousness and even physical form to any plant life on Earth. Swamp Thing's very existence is defined by the question, is he a man who looks like a plant, or a plant that thinks it's a man? Alan Moore sought to answer this question on his run, widely regarded to be the greatest in the character's long history. Early on, Moore revealed that Swamp Thing isn't actually a transformed Alec Holland. Alec Holland truly did die that day in the swamp. Swamp Thing is merely a mysterious form of plant life that absorbed fragments of Holland's consciousness and memories, causing an existential crisis within Swamp Thing, questioning his own existence and place in the universe. He comes to terms with who he is and accepts his identity with such powerful writing that I won't spoil it for you. Just know that you really should read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run. He eventually becomes the avatar of the Green, and in time learns to master all elemental forces, including the planet. In the late 90s, early 2000s, the comics left Swamp Thing like this for a period and focused on the daughter Tefe for a while, inserting some more hints into the lore of what we now understand is the Green and the Parliament of Trees, in which there is always a Swamp Thing essentially throughout time. It's the Green's way to ensure there is always their will being connected to the human world. In the Blackest Night arc, Swamp Thing's tricked into believing he is Necron, DC's embodiment of death. In a similar manner to how he was once tricked into being Alec Holland, he is corrupted and becomes a murder machine until stopped by the White Lantern entity in an effort to thwart the destruction of Necron, aka Swamp Thing, essentially by bringing the essence of the actual Alec Holland back to life, to which the Green, Parliament of Trees, attaches to create a new Swamp Thing that actually this time is fully Alec Holland. He destroys the corrupted husk of the old Swamp Thing and becomes the new Swamp Thing in a long line in the Parliament of Trees Avatars of the Green. The most recent miniseries focuses on Levi Kami, the new avatar of the Green after the OG Swamp Thing is killed, quote-unquote, during the pages of Dark Knight's Death Metal. And despite these changes of is it Alec, is it not, are we focusing on Tefe, are we focusing on Levi, which avatar of the Green are we looking at, the constant is always the same: the critical consensus and creative utopia. So let's look at Volume 1. This was from 1971 through 76, and honestly Volume 1 is probably the weakest entry on this list of Swamp Thing volumes, although still groundbreaking. Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson created Swamp Thing as a popular body horror character. I'm not going to tell you that this 24-issue run was perfect, but I am going to tell you that the first 10 issues are pretty damn close. Wein and Wrightson did the first half of the issues together and created some iconic stories, villains, and imagery doused in horror that just wasn't done at the time. What you need to remember is the Comics Code Authority was still in full swing in the 70s, and there were still things you weren't allowed to do in comics, like horror imagery. But Swamp Thing, right from the jump, didn't seem to be obeying that and just did what they wanted to do. This doing what they wanted to do is going to be a reoccurring theme amongst the writing staff on Swamp Thing, you'll see. Let's check out the critical consensus on Volume 1. Comicsreview.co.uk says, "It's a genuine landmark of the art form. These stories are superb examples of old-fashioned comic wonderment from a less cynical and sophisticated age, but with a passion and intensity that cannot be matched. And, ooh, that artwork." Volume 1 was a great start and really set the stage for pushing the envelope that in Volume 2 just took to a new level. Let's look at Volume 2, what most people consider to be the pinnacle of Swamp Thing. This run was entitled Saga of the Swamp Thing, and the first 19 issues were a solid continuation on the themes put forth from the original team, depicting great sci-fi horror. Killing Joke, Watchmen, and V for Vendetta's famous Alan Moore took over on issue 20, fittingly called Loose Ends, in which Alan Moore decided to take a simple horror character and make him question who he was if everything he knew was stripped away. It's in the next issue, however, issue 21, where Alan Moore's genius comes through. While Swamp Thing's body is dissected, we learn that he is just a plant. No heart, no bones. He is, in fact, not Alec Holland. The biorestorative formula and the vegetation in which he died acted like a sponge and consumed his memories and personality. But he was just a copy, not the real Alec. Unable to bear this truth and learning he was not human, he succumbs to his grief and loses his mind. It's only when he's needed in a later moment of heroism does he carve his own fate and decide his own destiny. Free from the restraints of his past human lies, he begins his authentic living and proudly accepts who he is, declaring, "No, I am not Alec. I am Swamp Thing." This was a beautiful story that was inherently profound in its use of narrative, establishing one's ability to fully let go of one's rackets and constructing one's own life based on being present to your world. This intelligent writing is what I think changed Swamp Thing forever and elevated it from horror to horror for smart people, hence adopting the name on further issues, Sophisticated Suspense. In addition, this run completely rejected the Comics Code Authority through shocking imagery and adult themes, forever cementing Swamp Thing as the title that would demand intelligent and innovative writing. Though Moore left in issue 64, the greatness continued in his footsteps, expanding on adult themes, crafting insightful stories, and if nothing else, greatly expanding the DC lore. The volume ends with Swamp Thing completing his evolution of self-discovery and his mastery of all the elements within Earth. You can still find fans gushing over this volume just like myself, specifically the Alan Run portions, although the Mark Miller portions are just as good, if not quite as iconic. The Alan Moore run specifically, though, is one of those comics that I try to reread annually. Up next we had Volume 3 and 4, this time under the Vertigo title, and it went from 2000 all the way to 2006, interestingly choosing to focus on Tefe, his daughter. To prove that a Swamp Thing run didn't need to just be about Alec Holland, we have 2 volumes here about a completely different character. Tefe Holland is a bizarre daughter of Alec Holland, introduced to us back in Volume 2 in issue 65. Tefe was originally a floating spirit called the Sprout, who tried to find a body from a recently deceased person. She was eventually given a body through Abby Holland, and how she was conceived is pretty weird. Since Abby couldn't outright have a baby with Swamp Thing for somewhat obvious reasons, she was able to have the baby through John Constantine, who was possessed by Swamp Thing. But due to Constantine having the demon Nurgle's blood in his veins, Tefe is also part demon. She eventually became an earth elemental like her father beginning a line of human Earth elementals as a new Swamp Thing, having all of her father's powers but retaining a human appearance. When we're introduced to her, she's kind of a mess. A young child with godlike powers and no sense of morality. Her parents do everything to save her, but in the end, it's not her parents to save her, but Tefé herself. I can actually relate to that. Throughout Volume 3 and 4, she dealt with disturbed people, but found herself to be the most disturbed. It's one of the best coming-of-age stories I've ever read, even if it is doused in dark imagery and violence. Overall, fans and critics alike love the portrayal of the bizarre Holland family and the trials and learnings of Tefé often being cited as one of the most bizarrely relatable DC characters. Sci-Fi.com calls Volume 3 a forgotten feminist classic, citing that once again the series chose to focus on ideas, themes, and concepts that just generally weren't being done at the time. We've already established that Swamp Thing writers, whomever they may be, tried to push the boundaries of what they would write about, and the stories remained sophisticated and real. It was also one of DC's first portrayals of an empowered but broken woman character of queer orientation. Something more common now, but not so much in the early 2000s. But Swamp Thing always seems to innovate and be ahead of the curve. Volume 5, which we're just going to call the New 52, was a reboot of sorts. It's a different continuity than previously established, and it really dove into the whole green versus the red versus the rot, and all the elements of our Earth just battling each other. This reiteration brings us back to the early events of scientist Alec Holland. He is prophesized to become the Swamp Thing and savior of the green and the Parliament of Trees. He is sabotaged by the rot in an effort to stop the prophecy from coming true. He survives and ultimately is given the choice to willingly become Swamp Thing by taking his bioreformative formula with the help of the green as a sense of responsibility to be a hero to the Parliament of Trees who is suffering attacks from the rot. This is an interesting character switch, where instead of a plant learning he's not Alec Holland and forming his own destiny, here we have an alive and well Alec Holland sacrificing his humanity to fulfill the prophecy given to him by the green. It was a unique take which acted as a more action-driven epic with stunning visuals and a play on the previous themes. Just like with every Swamp Thing run, it felt very large, scale, and innovative as it seemed to feel like a massive DC event. Here's what Comic Book Herald had to say. This run is fascinating. Yes. It veers so hard into its new direction that it's quite unlike everything that came before it. Swamp Thing is the avatar of the green, yes, but he's more than that. He's the green's sole warrior to defend against the red, animals, and the rot, decay. The entire run is focused around a war between these three forces of life, instigated by the genesis of a new avatar of the rot. It's high stakes, constantly moving, and genuinely feels like an event comic before the actual event even starts. And then you have the recently critically acclaimed Swamp Thing Winter Special, which included original co-creator Len Wein's unfinished final Swamp Thing comic, which is just a total tearjerker to get through when you think of his passing and this gift to us. The fantastic Future State Swamp Thing, which is a 2-issue arc, and for about an entire month was my pick of the month. And even now, with the current miniseries going on, every single issue is bold, exciting, and innovative. So why are all these different runs with different writers, different artists, all coming together in cohesive, strong, big boy themed stories? Is it because the precedent was set right out of the gate by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson's imagery of the macabre going against what was permitted at the time by the Comics Code Authority? Something that Alan Moore, Brian Vaughan, Scott Snyder, Joshua Dysart, Kelly Jones, Rick Veitch, Mark Miller, and so many others would seek to emulate once they had their own turn at bat? In every iteration of Swamp Thing, it seems writers get to let their hair down and create a story they've always wanted to create that maybe they weren't allowed to get into on Superman or Wonder Woman. Swamp Thing was a rejection of the Comics Code Authority in every meaning of the sense. And it's clearly stories that are not meant to have red tape or any sort of limitations. To quote Alan Moore, I like the idea of having Swamp Thing free of the code, not so we could do any grotesque physical violence or sex, but so that we can do stories that an adult could read and find something interesting in them. In each invention of Swamp Thing, it seems to consistently be used as a method and a medium to push the envelope. With Alan Moore, it was self-identity. With Vaughn, it was legacy. With Miller, it was seeing one's potential fully realized. Ram V reminded us of hope that Swamp Thing stories often bring. Snyder dealt with sacrifice. Throughout all of these, there's always been dense, haunting, poetic, mystical, thematically rich substance. These comics are loaded. We've barely even talked about the art yet. Take away the writing and just look at the art. Just look at these examples through the years. Whether it be the front cover or the pages within, everyone is just bringing their A game. From Wrightson to Jason Fabok, from Kelly Jones to Stephen Bissett, John Totleben to Greg Staples. I mean, what is going on here? It's always seemingly been the case that whenever a Swamp Thing is handed to a writer, the creative freedoms just fly, and you can see the devotion in the final product. I do have another theory why Swamp Thing has been so good for 50 years straight now. Do you think maybe there's a certain amount of pressure put on a creative team to do Swamp Thing? You know, after 50 straight years, someone's gonna feel pretty lousy if they mess it up now. Why is it that Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men, Green Lantern, Wolverine, Spawn, Superman, Iron Man all have moments of objectively bad issues or arcs? Do you think maybe they've just gone on too long and it's just pretty much impossible to keep something that consistent fresh? It does help that other than Volume 2, every single Swamp Thing volume is basically a mini-series or a maxi-series. My favorite TV shows, The Wire, Sopranos, Breaking Bad, are all objectively excellent works of art. Sopranos had 6 seasons. Breaking Bad and The Wire only had 5 seasons. It allows it to tell the stories it wants to tell and then walk away before it goes bad. I do have a bit of a theory that if it goes on for too long, it can get creatively a bit boring. What I choose to believe is that a creative precedent was set early on which compels DC to continue to carry the flame for more generations to come. Those early risks is what made Swamp Thing so likable, enjoyable, and thought-provoking, and it's what makes comics today continue to be as sharp as they are. I've always found myself continuously recommending new Swamp Thing issues, and I hope to do that until they get bad. No pressure, future Swamp Thing creative teams. Why do you guys think that Swamp Thing has been so consistently good? Are there any theories you have that maybe I didn't touch on? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to give me a character that you think has had such a perfect run as Swamp Thing has. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks for letting me dork out, guys, and as always, hit that like and comment down below on your way out, and keep on collecting.